Good morning, people of YouTube. This is your buddy Choppadong coming at you once again with another DFS video. This time we're going to be focused on NHL. The NFL Week 5 just wrapped up, and I've been itching to get back into NHL a little bit, and so I'm going to attempt to knock the rust off here, and I apologize. You're going to have to bear with me a little bit until we get back into a routine, back into a groove. I'm trying to remember what we were doing last year, what we're going to do that's new this year, how we're going to step up our game. We're going to get to the next level and really point out to you guys the quickest and fastest way to do your research, because a lot of people play NBA, they play NHL, they play NFL, and we don't need to be spending 3 and 4 hours a day researching all of this stuff unless this is your favorite sport to play, in which case, by all means, dive in as deep as you want to go. Like I said, my name is Choppadong. You can follow me on Twitter at Choppadong. That is how you find me out there. And inside the DFS Army, the other site that I represent, I'm a coach and contributor at dfsarmy.com. You can follow the link in the description of the article, or just click the link below the video here and take you straight away to the website, where we have a bunch of tools. We have an optimizer, we have strategy for all of the major sports that are covered. NHL is going to be found under other sports. It's a niche sport. I just happen to like it, so I cover it. We've got articles and strategy articles, of course. If you want to, if this is the first time you've ever taken a look at any DFS type stuff, there's a couple of strategy articles in there. I know that if I go deep enough, I can find one of the beginning articles I wrote back at the beginning of middle of last year, and we'll see if we can find it real quick. These breakaways, they're a cash game strategy for FanDuel and Draftkings. Call that bad boy up, read through the basics of building an NHL lineup, and of course, we are off and running. So, once again, dfsarmy.com, and enter coupon code CHOP, C-H-O-P, if you're interested in becoming a VIP member, because that is how you get 20% off the life of your membership. Diving into the actual website, I play on DraftKings. FanDuel is similar, but a little bit different. I may branch out and do a little bit of FanDuel this year, but for now, we're going to be, until we get back in a groove, we're going to be stuck on DraftKings. So, what we're going to be doing is we're going to try to identify some value picks, walk through the games a little bit, kind of describe the games we maybe should be targeting. And the way I do that, because we don't have our own DFS premium tools on DFS Army, I go to RotoGrinders and use their free information, another phenomenal research site. Not to lead you away to different sites, I'd rather you stay in-house, but when we don't have a house to stay in, sometimes you got to go down the road to grandma's and take a peek at what she's got in the oven. Anyway, St. Louis at New York Islanders. This is a noon game, so maybe you get to it, maybe you don't. We should probably focus on the 4-game main slate. But if I was to take a look at this game with the 5.5 over under, the minus 115 on New York, I'm probably not favoring a goalie here. We want to focus on big money lines, and we want to focus on smaller over under totals. For our skaters, we want to focus on higher over under totals, and we want to focus on bigger implied odds or implied goals scored for our team. So we'll kind of poke through a slate and we'll look for some of that stuff. Colorado at Boston, there's a 320 over 3, pretty strong, worth looking into. Minus 188. Most likely Tuukka Rask is in play tonight in your cash games as far as a goalie is concerned, and you may even want to take some Boston Bruins as skaters. 5.5 over under on New Jersey and Buffalo. You got a near 3 here with Buffalo. They tend to shoot, they tend to score, they tend to allow shots too. Minus 130, it's okay. I'd like to see over 150. I'd like to see closer to 180, 190 like we saw up here, but I don't know if we're going to get that on the later slate. Chicago at Toronto, 6.5 over under tells me this is where the chalk's going to be focused on the skaters in this game. Both teams are over a 3 with a minus 130 on the Toronto goalie. I don't know that I would roster Anderson tonight against a Chicago Blackhawks team that's implied to score 3 goals on their own, and we don't have an overwhelming favorite at home in Toronto anyway. So, I mean, I think a lot of this is based on the fact that Toronto's come out of the gates scoring just a crap load of goals. Toronto, the one secret about Toronto you might want to know, they tend to shoot the puck a ton, but they tend to give up a lot of shots in the other direction. Very fast-paced, up and down the ice team that doesn't really give a crap about what you do in their end. They're just going to get the puck and go flying down your end and fire on your goalie. So that's kind of one of the neat things about Toronto, is they're a good DFS team to be targeting both for and against. 5.5 over under Washington and Tampa Bay. Again, close to a 3, a 50-50 type of game. Winnipeg and Edmonton, the 6th. This is probably your second chalkiest game of the night for skaters. Winnipeg tends to score in bunches. Haven't really gotten off to a really quick start from what I've paid attention to this year, but they are a team that can score. Edmonton, of course, fairly solid team. Favored here. Cam Talbot, probably your evening chalk goalie. At the 150 favorite coming out of Vegas with the 3.3 goals in support of. Now, Calgary at Anaheim. Anaheim's a team that is very tough to beat at home, so if you wanted to look into Gibson, you certainly could. And on top of that, the 5.5 over-under is a little bit lower than the 6 that we saw up here. And the minus 130 isn't too far off from the minus 150, but, you know, it is what it is. Calgary, I might take my chances with Gibson, being that Anaheim is very tough to beat in their own home, and Calgary coming in on the road is not, excuse me, not always the most impressive team going. So that might be a better situation than getting in a, you know, I mean, for hockey terms, a possible shootout here between Winnipeg and Edmonton. This is probably your safer pick in John Gibson. Now, when we're looking at actual rosters, we'll scroll back up to the top here and we'll come digging down. One thing that I always harp on, if you're playing cash games, yeah, a lot of people stack. And hockey's a very volatile sport. Being that it's a volatile sport, if you can hit on the correct plays and you can stack a line, like say you like Stastny, Tarasenko, and Sobotka, and you stack all three of them, or you do Stastny, Tarasenko, and Schenn for the power play 1 unit, or Schwartz, or whatever. You want to load up on a couple of different lines and then all of the power play 1s. That's fine. Very boomer bust. To me, very GPP oriented. If you end up on a power play and Jaden Schwartz scores the goal assisted by Stastny and Tarasenko, then you're going to rack up a ton of points on that one little goal because all of those plays correlate together very, very well. But because they're all three from the same game, and honestly, mostly from the same line, if Yaskin scores from, you know, Schwartz and Thompson because they rotated up a power play 2 or something, I mean, you're left out in the dark. If the Blues score 3 goals tonight and they all tend to come off of the second line and you've only got access to Jaden Schwartz, you're not really focusing that stack. You've just burned up 2 of these salaries up here. So for GPPs, that's great. We want to focus that as much as we can, just like we did in MLB when we had players that we wanted to put on base and we wanted a home run hitter behind them to drive them all in and scoop up all those points, just like we do in the NFL when we run a quarterback and his wide receiver and maybe a tight end. Then we're hoping that he throws 2 passes to, you know, 2 touchdowns to each one, and we just scoop up all the points out of that game. That is a GPP philosophy, and it's a good one. But for cash games, we want to mitigate risk. What we're do in our cash type games is we're trying to avoid the disaster. And when we start really stacking all of our eggs into the same basket, we're really setting ourselves up for disaster as well. And in such a volatile game, like hockey, like baseball, where Mike Trout can go 0 for 5 and Vladimir Tarasenko can score no goals in a game, you really, really, really set yourself up for failure when it comes to hitting that cash line. So while we need a little bit of correlation, just like I said in baseball, we want a little bit of correlation. We don't want a ton. So for me, what I tend to do is I will look at these top 2 lines. These are the guys getting the minutes. The guys usually getting the shots. The guys, yeah, we pay up for them a little bit. But I would take, say, Tarasenko and Schwartz, or Stastny and Schenn, or something like that. I don't mind taking 2 players off of different lines that are overlapping on the same power play unit. That way, if I do get lucky, they are on the power play and one passes to the other, he puts the biscuit in the basket. I get points for everything that correlates fairly well, but it is spread out enough that in the case of a St. Louis scoring 4 goals in the game, I'm not just, you know, pigeonholed into this top line that if the line 2 does all the damage tonight, I completely missed out. I'm spread out just a little bit. I call it casting a wider net. The idea there is to spread out that net a little bit and get you kind of where you're getting pieces of the good games. That way we can focus also, instead of putting 3 guys on the same line in the same game and only getting points out of here, we're getting points out of both lines. Maybe we run a defenseman, you know, down here, a Pietrangelo with a, you know, Tarasenko and a Schwartz. I'd be okay with that because now you're really spreading yourself out a little bit. But you're focused on just the Blues. And we've got other games that we want to focus on. If I look down here in the Maple Leafs, I might run, if I run both sides of this one. Let's say I take, Saad Taves and then come down here to Patrick Sharp. Okay, now I've got the power play 1 unit covered, and I've got 2 lines covered, but I've got 3 skaters on Chicago. If I do the same thing over here, let's throw salary cap out of the mix for a second and do the same thing over here, and let's say I run Van Riemsdyk, Bozak, and Marner, or let's run Kadri instead. Let's take Bozak out and go Van Riemsdyk, Marner, Kadri. Now I've still got 2 lines of exposure. I'm on the power play 1, just like I was over here, but I now have 6 skaters out of this 1 game. If this game goes 1-0, I'm dead. I am dead. This game has to produce. And not only does it have to produce, but I have to get the pieces of it. If I focus power here on this top line of Chicago and the second line of Toronto, I might be able to do something like that under the salary cap. But if this line up here and this line down here do the goal scoring in a 3-2 game, I'm still screwed. That's why hockey can be so tough. And that's why in hockey you'll hear me constantly throughout the year advocate spread out, spread out, spread out. So the games we're focused on are going to be this one, especially on the nighttime slate. I would focus a little bit here. The other thing that I'm going to look at that I will point out, now I'm not going to dive into player specifics today, I suppose, because we're already running out of time. But what I'm going to point out is Corsica.hockey, a great website. I threw in both years because this year's still new, and I wanted to see who traditionally shoots and who traditionally allows shots. That's your Corsi numbers. A Corsi factor on this website isn't considering just shots on goal. If you want to see just shots on goal, you can scroll over to the right and find them. But a Corsi factor is basically any puck fired at the net. If it gets blocked, it still registers a Corsi point. If it gets, if it goes in the goal or off the post or shoots, it's a shot. It's not a shot on goal, it's a shot. I want to know what teams are typically shooting and what teams are typically allowing shots, because this tells me where these offenses are going to come from. And then I'm going to transfer that back into things like, well, way up here at the top, minutes per game. Who's playing the minutes? Who's on the ice? Who, not necessarily the goals and the assists, those are a little unpredictable night to night. But who's shooting the puck? That's what I want to know, because that's your opportunity in hockey. Your opportunity is obviously passing the puck through assists, but shooting the puck for goals. So if I'm trying to find out where I want to find my value or where I want to find my players, I'm going to focus on the games scheduled to score a lot, the teams scheduled to shoot a lot, going up against a team allowing a lot of shots, and then I'm going to find the guys that are playing the most minutes and shooting the puck. You see how that works together? Do you see how logical that flows? We're trying to find the production within the offenses, and I'll narrow this down as the year goes on, but just as a tidbit, I do a little bit of that, and then I scroll down here to the cheaper players, because we're often I build from the bottom up. A lot of guys, I read articles, and they talk about, okay, so I pick my goalie first, and then I try to pick a couple of studs and then build everything around that. That's bullshit, man. That is not how you build a hockey lineup. And I can't believe some of these guys write for other websites. That is not how you build a hockey lineup. All of DFS centers around value. Find your value. How do you find your value? You come down here at the bottom of the barrel and you start looking for production. Who, for the minimum pricing, is getting minutes, getting shots, and getting points? Now, this might not be a good example because it's only 2 points per game. But 2 points per game for almost 3K on Draftkings, it's not great, but it's not terrible. I'd like to see a lot better. So I'm going to scroll up here as a 2.3. I'm watching where am I going to start getting production that gets above the 3. I want more than a 1-to-1 ratio. If I can start finding that over the last 2 years, I'm in a pretty good spot. Now, I can sift off by 4 weeks if I want there. You're getting close to 1-to-1. So Dehan out of the New York Islanders is maybe playable, almost 20 minutes a game, shot and a half per game. You know, I mean, if I go back up here and I look at a Dahan, he's not on a power play unit, so I don't like that as much. I want the guys getting power play time too. So I keep scrolling up and keep scrolling up and keep scrolling up till I find there's a near a 3, but we're at 4. We need to be looking for bigger numbers now. There's a 3.5. Nope, see, that's just barely on par. But you can see where your ratios are going to run in hockey. They're not going to get you a point per thousand in salary. And it's a very volatile sport. If Treba gets me, a goal, he gets me 3 points right there. But on average, over 62 games in the past 2 years, he's getting me about 3.5 a game. So let's do this a little bit differently, because what you're going to find is up at the top is where you find him. And you still look at this 4.5 points per game for Connor McDavid, 8.4 in salary. You'd look at that and go, well, there's no value there. There really is. If I want to cut this back down to, say, the last 4 weeks, that's just going to get us this season's numbers. But if I just cut it to 4 weeks, and now I sort by, say, salary again, excuse me, kind of getting a cold here. And I go and I scroll all the way down to the bottom of the barrel again. Now I'm looking at mostly 2 games, 1 game, 2 games played. Very, very small sample, which is why these numbers aren't reliable yet. They'll get a little bit more reliable. But let's try and find somebody. There's 2 at 4 points a game. Rudda off of Chicago. Where's Chicago? No power play time for Mr. Rudda. And who was the other one? Nathan Walker out of Washington. Where are my Caps? There we go. Nathan Washington. Well, that's no good. I don't even need to know the names of these guys. Nathan Walker, my bad. So there he was on the 3rd wing. So, 4th line. Not going to get the minutes. If I look at his minutes per game, we're stuck at 11 minutes per game. Or we should be. Scroll this back up. Yeah, 11 minutes per game. Not great. So these are, flyers that kind of worked out. If I scroll, guy put a goal in the, in the bucket here, and then in his limited minutes and whatever else. That's why you need these numbers to normalize out just a little bit. I wish there was a way I could go back the past 30 games into last year. But you can see that when I've got nearly 8 points per game, out of Brody in Calgary. Where was Calgary? Brody, I'm on the power play one. This one's playable. Now, is it playable in Anaheim versus Anaheim against the goalie? Not if we take the goalie, it's not. But at the same time, I don't know, maybe, he's scored himself a couple of goals and got himself a couple of assists of some kind to start the season off. Like I said, I'm rusty. I'm still getting into a rhythm myself, but this is generally what I did. I would go through the starting lineups. I would look at who's shooting the puck. And so I will tell you, St. Louis, 26th in Corsi 4, which means they're not shooting the puck a lot. They're ranked 26 out of 30. Corsi against, they're 29th. They are a shot suppressing team. New York Islanders are a Corsi 4 of 16, so middle of the pack, and a Corsi against of 3, top 5. They allow a lot of shots. So even though St. Louis' Corsi 4 is ranked 26th, they're facing the 3rd ranked Corsi against team, which means St. Louis should have an easier time shooting the puck tonight, should they decide to. They should get a bump in their shot. Let's say they average 20 shots per game. They should get 24, 25 shots off. They should get a bump. That little bitty bump helps players that shoot the puck, like a Tarasenko or like a Jaden Schwartz or somebody like that that's pumping shots on goal. They should get an extra shot or so per game tonight, maybe a couple. I don't know. And with that, if they score out of 1 out of every 6 goals, or 1 out of every 6 shots on goal, they score a goal, then odds are they're closer and closer to being, more of a lock, more of a safer pick to bet on scoring a goal tonight. Could it happen? I don't know. The one shot he hits might ring off the post. Goalie might make a diving save. I really don't know. But what I know is that if I stay with the opportunity, that I'm putting my eggs in good baskets. And like I said, I'm trying to spread them out, but I'm getting my eggs in the good baskets. St. Louis should see a bump in shots tonight is the takeaway from today. That's the takeaway from today for that particular game. Colorado versus Boston. Boston is the #2 shooting team over the last 2 years. They're facing a top 10 shot allowing team in Colorado. Boston should pump shots on goal today. So you might focus on some of these Boston players in your skating. New Jersey Devils are not a shooting team. Not at all. But they're facing the #6 shot allowing team in Buffalo, which means New Jersey will most likely be shooting the puck. I will tell you from last year, one thing I do remember, Toronto and Buffalo were very up and down natured teams where they didn't really care about shots on goal. They went back and forth, shot on your end and then allowed you to shoot on their end. So New Jersey, if they're going to keep pace for that, being that it's in Buffalo's arena tonight, I would say they're going to play more to Buffalo's style of play just by the very nature of it. I will also say that Buffalo is going to have to come down into New Jersey's style of play by the very nature of having a team that is a little more methodical playing against them. So Buffalo's shot totals will probably be suppressed. New Jersey's will probably come up. Does it mean New Jersey's a good play today? Not really. But it might for your tournaments. You like a Palmieri, you like somebody like that, you might take a look at them and see if they're shooting the puck well. This is going to be the game you're focused on, though. When I look at Chicago and Toronto, the 6.5 over says it all. Chicago is the 14th most shooting team going up against Toronto, allowing the 4th most shots. That's a plus-plus situation. Chicago likes to shoot. Toronto likes to allow shots. That is a plus situation for Chicago. On the other side of it, Toronto shoots the 4th most often, and Chicago allows the 18th most, so still top half. I would say this game's going to go up and down the ice and be a very active game, which is why Vegas likes it for goals. Okay? I would definitely focus on taking 2 or 3, maybe 4 skaters out of this game and just banking on the fact that it should produce. It's hockey, might not, but it should. Washington and Tampa Bay, 2 middling teams for shots on goal and 2 tougher teams on shots allowed on goal. So these 2 teams tend to suppress shots a little bit. They play decent defense and they don't really shoot the puck a ton themselves. To me, that sets up as a little bit of a dud. Doesn't mean the game won't explode. Ovechkin might come out with another damn hat trick. Who knows with that guy? Winnipeg and Edmonton is the other game to focus on. 6 over under and slanted more towards the Edmonton side. You've got Winnipeg shooting 24th most often, facing the 17th most shots allowed in Edmonton. That is not necessarily a great matchup. You got a team that doesn't like to shoot a ton, yet facing a team that suppresses shots a little bit. Not a great spot for the offense. Edmonton, 15th most shooting, going up against Winnipeg, the 20th most shots allowed. That's kind of middle. Again, it's kind of a neutral situation. This is probably just based on the way these guys have been playing this year. Again, I trust Vegas. I would most definitely. There was some discussion in our VIP forum. Calgary and Anaheim again. You've got a couple of teams that don't necessarily like to shoot going up against each other where Anaheim tends to allow some shots, which is odd. I expect that number to correct itself a little bit. And right now, Calgary is not allowing a ton of shots. So it doesn't look like a great game for offense. So we're going to focus on the offensive games. We're going to dip in. We're going to take a couple of the wingers, a couple of the other players, and we're going to try and do what we can to load up on covering a couple of different lines and overlapping on the power play. Or if you stay in the same line with line 8 and Little, you've got the power play units breaking them apart, and most of the time they're going to be out there. Like if you see that line 2 matches up well against this line 2 and the numbers you look at, you might stay together with line mates and then break them off on the power play to kind of spread your risk around that game a little bit and hope to catch goals in several different areas. That's the biggest takeaway I can give you in this video. You'll hear me harp on it all season long. We're getting up on 25 minutes. We're going to go ahead and cut it off. But if you guys, that's just a brief round robin of the hockey slate for today and tonight. I would go so far as to tell you, when you're building bottom up, dive into a sheet like this where you can scroll up and you can find some of these guys that are playing hot. Hot skaters are a lot like hot bats in baseball. Guys scoring goals tend to keep scoring goals for a little while, and when they get cold, they tend to stay cold for a while. Ride those hot hands. Let those hot hands sort of appear and demand your attention, and then get on the train. If some team is heading into a situation tonight, like I said, the Blues were, where the Blues are off to a good goal scoring start, and they're going into a team in the Islanders that allows a lot of shots on goal, ride the hot hand. Find the guys scoring goals. A lot of cases, it's our defense. St. Louis tip for you. But a lot of cases, you find those hot hands. You spread out. You take the Tarasenko, you take the Schwartz, and you get two different lines of coverage, both overlap on the power play, and you maybe pair them with a Pietrangelo and you let it go. Let that dog eat. Hockey's very up and down. You're going to have losing nights. You're going to have some good winning nights. I would tell you to definitely focus on a little bit of correlation. More so than when you hear cash games, we don't stack at all. In hockey, we do. But we don't go overboard and stack everything and throw all of our eggs in one basket. We do it smartly. We stack smartly. If this is stuff you want more information on, or you want more details or more coaching on, I would tell you that DFS Army is definitely the place to go. And like I said before, you follow my link, my description, in the description, you use coupon code CHOP for a 20% off discount. And we'll get you the one-on-one coaching. We'll teach you to become a better player. Hockey was a lot of fun last year. I'm really looking forward to it again this year. Hopefully you guys jump on board, you give us a shot, you play us for NHL, NBA, stuff like that you also like to do, and you find out that this is a community of guys that really like to bootstrap, help each other out, group think, coach each other up, give different opinions, and really just make everybody better as a whole and turn you into a better DFS player. All right, guys, we'll talk to you next time.